The notification came in at 3:12 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember the exact time because I had just finished a meeting about expanding our Miami property's rooftop concept when my phone buzzed against the marble conference table. For 8 months, that phone had been silent when it came to them. 8 months of nothing. No calls. No "how are you?" No birthday message. No holiday check-in. Just silence. And then, exactly 2 hours after a national business outlet published the headline, "Young founder builds $94 million luxury hotel empire before 30. My father texted, "Call me. We need to talk. Family matters." Family. I stared at that word longer than I should have. It's funny how a single word can feel like a threat. The boardroom around me was all glass and skyline, 27 floors above downtown. My name was etched in chrome outside the door, CEO and founder. I had built this. Every tile. Every contract. Every sleepless night. But that text pulled me backward. Not because I missed them. 'Cause I knew exactly why they were reaching out. They hadn't ignored me. They had ignored the version of me that wasn't profitable. I picked up my bag and left the office early. My assistant asked if everything was okay. I smiled. Everything is exactly as it should be. Sighed. The air was warm, but something inside me felt cold. Not broken. Not fragile. Just cold. There's a specific kind of chill that only family can create. Settles in your chest like unfinished business. I slid into my car, the same silver electric coupe I bought the week my second property turned profitable. I didn't buy it to impress anyone. I bought it because I promised myself that when I made it, I would never ask permission to enjoy it. As I drove, the city blurred into memory. 8 months ago, I had stood alone in a different building. Different lights. Different silence. Business school graduation. Master's in hospitality and luxury brand strategy. 6 years of work. 2 internships. 1 unpaid management role. 0 financial help from home. I had reserved 4 seats. My mother. My father. My older sister. My younger brother. 4 empty chairs stared back at me when my name was called. I walked across that stage with my head high, but I remember scanning the audience anyway. You don't look for applause when you know you won't get it. You look for acknowledgement, recognition, a sign that someone is proud. 2 hours before the ceremony, my mother had sent a text. "Sweetheart, your father thinks it's best we don't encourage unrealistic paths. We'll celebrate when you settle into something stable." Unrealistic paths. That's what they called my dream of owning luxury boutique hotels. They wanted law school. Or corporate finance. Something respectable. Hospitality, according to my father, was service work dressed in nicer lighting. That day, they didn't just skip my graduation. They skipped me. And I made a decision in that auditorium. If they wouldn't clap for me at my beginning, they wouldn't get front row seats at my peak. I didn't cry that night. I opened my laptop. And I started building the blueprint for my first acquisition. A struggling 12-room coastal in that everyone said was a lost cause. Everyone except me. Back in the present, my phone buzzed again. This time from my mother. "Your father is proud. We always knew you'd do something big." That one almost made me laugh. Always knew. That's the thing about revisionist history. It edits out the parts where you were alone. I pulled into my penthouse parking garage and turned off the engine. The silence inside the car felt heavier than before. My father's final message appeared seconds later. "Dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Be there. It's time to discuss how you can contribute to the family." There it was. Not "we miss you." Not "congratulations." Contribute. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. They thought this was reconciliation. They thought success made me softer. They thought I was still the girl who waited for approval. But they had misunderstood something critical. Success doesn't heal betrayal. Clarifies it. I opened my eyes and looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back wasn't scanning crowds anymore. She was calculating leverage. They wanted a family meeting. Fine. I would attend. But not as their daughter. As their equal. And maybe, just maybe, as their only option. This wasn't going to be an emotional reunion. It was going to be a negotiation. And I never enter negotiations unprepared. The night after my graduation, I didn't go to any after-party. I didn't take pictures in front of the university fountain like everyone else did. I didn't post a smiling cap and gown photo with a caption about gratitude and new beginnings. I went home. Home at that time was a 420-square-foot studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin enough that I could hear arguments in Spanish from downstairs and the rhythmic thud of dryers until midnight. I placed my diploma on the kitchen counter, which also functioned as my desk, and sat down on the floor. I wasn't sad. That's the part people misunderstand. Sadness implies surprise. I wasn't surprised they didn't come. I was clarified. There's a difference. When someone disappoints you once, it hurts. When they confirm a lifelong pattern, it settles something inside you. I opened my laptop and reread the rejection email from a boutique hotel chain I had applied to 3 months earlier. While your academic performance is impressive, we are seeking candidates with stronger industry connections. Industry connections. Translation: family names. Money. Networks. Everything I didn't have. My father had always loved reminding me of that. You don't have the last name for luxury, he once said. Luxury is inherited. That sentence lived in my head for years. Luxury is inherited. So that night, instead of crying, I wrote down a single sentence in my notebook. If it's inherited, I'll build something worth inheriting. The first opportunity came disguised as a disaster. A small, run-down coastal inn 2 hours north of the city was heading toward bankruptcy. 12 rooms. Dated interiors. 1-star reviews complaining about mildew and rude staff. I saw something else. Location. Ocean view. Structural integrity. Bad management, not bad potential. The owner was desperate. He wanted out. I didn't have capital, but I had a plan. For 3 months, I worked 2 jobs, front desk supervisor at a corporate hotel during the day and event coordinator at night. I saved every dollar. Ate ramen. Canceled subscriptions. Sold my graduation jewelry. I pitched investors who laughed at me. One of them actually said, "You're ambitious." That's cute. Cute. I stopped pitching after that. Instead, I structured a lease-to-own agreement with the desperate owner. Risky. Complicated. But possible. The first 6 months nearly broke me. Plumbing failed twice. A storm damaged the roof. A travel blogger left a brutal review that tanked bookings for weeks. And during that time, not once did my family call to ask how I was doing. But I watched them online. Vanessa posting from Dubai. The Mason showing off a new sports car my father helped him finance. My mother at charity galas in gowns that cost more than my monthly payroll. They didn't believe in my dream. But they believed in optics. Meanwhile, I was scrubbing mildew from bathroom grout at 2 a.m. because I couldn't afford a full maintenance team yet. There's something powerful about cleaning your own floors. It removes entitlement permanently. The breakthrough didn't come from luck. Came from obsession. I redesigned the brand around quiet luxury escapes. Soft, neutral palettes. Locally sourced breakfasts. Personalized guest itineraries. I responded personally to every negative review. I memorized repeat guests' preferences. Within 9 months, our rating climbed from 2.8 to 4.6 stars. Then a travel editor from a mid-tier lifestyle magazine stayed with us anonymously. 3 weeks later, we were featured in a summer travel guide. Bookings tripled overnight. That's when the bank finally took me seriously. I refinanced. Acquired property number 2, this time in the mountains. Then a third. To acquisitions smarter than the last. I didn't expand recklessly. I expanded surgically. While my father invested in flashy expansions for his aging estate, golf courses, private spas, vanity projects, I invested in systems, cash flow, brand equity, digital presence. By the time my 4th hotel opened, I had built something my family never expected. Stability. Not inherited. Engineered. And yet, during all of it, the silence from them remained intact. No congratulations when my first feature article appeared. No acknowledgement when my brand won a regional hospitality award. Nothing. Until today. Until $94 million appeared next to my name in print. That's when I understood something else. They didn't doubt my dream because it was impossible. They doubted it because if I succeeded, it would expose them. Expose their laziness. Expose their dependency on old money. Expose the fact that the middle daughter, the impractical one, had outgrown the entire structure. And now they wanted dinner. Contribution. Family matters. As I stepped into my penthouse that evening, I walked past framed photos of each property. Proof of execution. Proof of endurance. I placed my keys on the console table and stared out at the city lights. 8 months of silence. Not one apology. Just an invitation the moment my valuation became public. I picked up my phone and typed a simple reply. I'll be there. Then I set the phone down. Not because I was eager. 'Cause I was ready. They thought tonight was about reunion. They had no idea. It was about accounting. And I keep very detailed records. I arrived at exactly 7:02 p.m. Not early. Not late. Deliberate. The estate gates were already open when I turned onto the long, winding driveway. They used to close automatically at sunset when I was a child. Purity, my father used to say, is what separates wealth from fantasy. Now the iron gates hung slightly crooked, one hinge rusted at the base. Purity had clearly become optional. The house stood at the top of the hill, illuminated in warm golden light, a tempting grandeur. From a distance it still looked impressive, columns, balconies, a circular fountain in the center. But as I drove closer, the details betrayed it. Cracks along the marble steps. Overgrown hedges. A fountain that wasn't running. Maintenance deferred is the first sign of liquidity problems. I parked my car beside my father's aging luxury sedan. It had once been the newest model on the market. Now it looked like a man clinging to a title he no longer owned. I stepped out slowly. The air smelled like dry grass and expensive perfume, my mother's signature scent drifting through an open window. I wasn't nervous. I was observant. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, perfectly styled. Silk blouse. Diamond studs. A smile rehearsed in the mirror. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, extending her arms. I allowed the hug, but I didn't lean in. "You look successful," she added, scanning my blazer, my watch, my heels. "You look unchanged," I replied calmly. Her smile flickered for half a second. "Come in. Your father is waiting." The dining room was set as if for a celebration. Candles. Silverware polished. Wine already poured. My father sat at the head of the table, posture straight, chin lifted. Vanessa lounged to his right, scrolling her phone. Mason leaned back in his chair, smirking like this was all mildly entertaining. No one stood when I entered. Power signals are subtle. I took the empty chair halfway down the table, not beside my father, not at the end. Neutral ground. "Well," my father began, cutting into his steak without looking at me, You've certainly made headlines. I folded my hands calmly. So I've heard. 94 million, Vanessa said, finally glancing up. That's impressive. For hospitality. There it was again. For hospitality. I smiled faintly. It's not luck. It's structure. My father waved a dismissive hand. Regardless, you've done adequately. Adequately. I waited. He didn't invite me to dinner for compliments. He cleared his throat. As you know, the family estate has been undergoing expansion plans. I knew. He had tried to add a luxury spa wing and private golf course extension 3 years ago. Vanity projects disguised as strategy. Regulatory delays, he continued. Unexpected capital bottlenecks. Translation, mismanagement. And, I asked. He leaned forward. The bank has tightened its lending terms. Temporarily. We require short-term liquidity to stabilize operations. There it was. Liquidity. Not celebration. Not reconciliation. A transaction. And how does that involve me? I asked evenly. Cynthia, my mother, leaned in with a soft voice. We thought this could be a beautiful opportunity for you to reconnect with your roots. Roots. I almost laughed. Philip continued, we're offering you a chance to invest. Become a minority partner in the estate's expansion. A buy-in of $2 million would secure your place in the family legacy. $2 million. He said it like he was offering me access to royalty. Mason smirked. It would look good for you. Being tied to something established. Established. The word tasted outdated. I glanced around the table slowly. Not one of them had asked how I built my company. Not one had apologized for missing my graduation. Not one had acknowledged the silence. They skipped straight to leverage. You went 8 months without speaking to me, I said calmly. And tonight you're asking for $2 million. Philip stiffened. We believed space was necessary. You were being impulsive. Impulsive. Building 5 profitable properties across 3 states was impulsive. But expanding a failing golf course wasn't. I leaned back slightly. What exactly are you offering in return? A seat at the table, he said sharply. Influence. Continuity. I looked at him carefully. He still believed the table belonged to him. Vanessa spoke again. Honestly, Brianna, this is a chance for you to prove you're not just lucky. Lucky. I felt something shift inside me, not anger. Clarity. They thought my valuation made me useful. They thought money softened memory. They thought I would be grateful for entry into a crumbling empire. My father lifted his glass. So, are you prepared to contribute? The word hung in the air again. Contribute. Not invest. Not collaborate. Contribute. As if I were repaying a debt. I reached into my handbag slowly. Not for a checkbook. For a folder. I placed it gently on the table. You're right, I said quietly. This is about family business. Philip's lips curved, satisfied. He thought I was agreeing. He had no idea. This dinner wasn't about me buying into their legacy. It was about them discovering how little of it was left, and how much of it I already owned. I opened the folder, and the room shifted. I slid the first document across the table slowly. Not dramatically. Precision is more intimidating than theatrics. Philip glanced down at the paper, irritation already forming on his face, the kind he wore when servers brought the wrong wine. What is this? He asked flatly. A public filing, I replied calmly. 3 months old. Vanessa leaned slightly to see it better. Mason stopped smirking. Philip picked it up, and the color drained from his face. It was a lean notice. filed by the primary construction firm hired for the spa expansion. 6 months of unpaid invoices. $2.3 million outstanding. You've been behind on contractor payments since March, I continued evenly. Which explains the regulatory delay. Philip dropped the paper onto the table. You've been snooping, he snapped. I've been researching, I corrected. Cynthia's voice trembled slightly. That's private family information. It became my concern when you asked for $2 million. Silence. I pulled out the second document. A refinancing disclosure. High-interest bridge loan. Collateralized against the estate itself. You leveraged the house, I said. At unfavorable terms. Philip's jaw tightened. It was temporary, he growled. It's compounding, I replied. I turned to Mason. Your trust distribution was paused last quarter. He blinked. What? Philip slammed his hand on the table. Enough. But it wasn't enough. It was barely the beginning. The trust wasn't paused, I said quietly. It was reallocated. Mason looked at his father now, not amused, not smug. Confused. You said it was restructuring, Mason muttered. It was, Philip shot back. For debt coverage, I added. Cynthia's breathing became uneven. You don't understand the complexities, she said weakly. I looked at her gently. I understand balance sheets. And this one was bleeding. I pulled out the final document. The foreclosure warning. Not yet active. But imminent. 2 missed covenant thresholds. 30 days from escalation. The estate wasn't expanding. It was sinking. Philip stood up abruptly. You come into my house and attempt to humiliate me? No, I said calmly, standing as well. I came because you invited me to participate. He stepped closer, trying to loom. He used to intimidate me this way when I was a teenager. Volume. Height. Presence. But power without leverage is noise. You think because you built a few hotels you understand legacy? He hissed. I held his gaze. I understand solvency. The room was silent now. Even Vanessa's phone lay forgotten. You asked for $2 million, I continued. But what you actually need is 8. Cynthia gasped. Philip's eyes flickered. He hadn't expected that number. You're exposed on 3 fronts, I said. Contractors. Loan covenants. Property tax reassessment. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You're not offering me a seat at the table, I finished. You're asking for a bailout. The word landed heavy. Bailout. Philip's breathing turned shallow. You ungrateful. I built my company from nothing, I interrupted. While you invested in aesthetics over infrastructure. You think you're better than us? Vanessa snapped. I turned to her. No. I think I'm disciplined. Mason looked between us, unease creeping in. Philip straightened his jacket as if regaining posture could restore authority. This family gave you opportunity, he said. No, I replied quietly. This family gave me motivation. That was the difference. He stared at me, searching for hesitation. For softness. For the daughter who wanted approval. She wasn't here tonight. He tried one last tactic. If this estate collapses, he said lowly, your name collapses with it. I almost smiled. My brand, I said calmly, is separate. That was the mistake he had made. He believed legacy was inherited. I built mine as an independent entity. Cynthia's voice cracked. What do you want, Brianna? Not money. Not revenge. Clarity. I want you to understand something, I said. You didn't ignore me because I failed. You ignored me because I succeeded without you. Truth hung there, undeniable. Philip looked smaller now. Not physically. Structurally. Authority only works when people believe in it. Tonight, belief had evaporated. "You're still family," Cynthia whispered. I looked at her carefully. Family doesn't appear when valuation does. Silence again. But this time it wasn't tense. It was unstable. Philip's voice lowered. "What exactly are you proposing?" Finally. A real question. I closed the folder slowly. "I'm not proposing anything." I let that sink in. "You invited me here expecting capital." He swallowed. "I came with information." Power dynamic had shifted completely now. They thought I walked in as a potential investor. They were just realizing. I walked in as the only person in the room who could determine their future. And I hadn't even played my strongest card yet. The doorbell rang. Sharp. Unexpected. Philip flinched. No one moved. I allowed myself the smallest breath of satisfaction. 'Cause unlike them, I was expecting someone. And the real negotiation was about to begin. The doorbell rang again. Not hesitant. Not polite. Precise. Philip's eyes moved toward the hallway, irritation mixed with something new, fear. "Were you expecting someone?" Vanessa asked sharply. I didn't answer. Philip stormed toward the foyer, muttering under his breath about creditors and bad timing. I stayed seated. Control is most powerful when you don't chase it. A moment later, footsteps echoed back into the dining room. But they weren't alone. Behind my father stood Daniel Reyes, my corporate acquisitions attorney. Tailored navy suit. Leather briefcase. Calm expression. Professional. Unimpressed. "Good evening," Daniel said smoothly. "Apologies for the interruption. I'm here for Ms. Brianna." Philip turned slowly toward me. "What is this?" I stood. "This," I said calmly, "is preparation." Daniel stepped forward and placed his briefcase on the edge of the dining table. He didn't look intimidated. He didn't look impressed. He looked like a man who closed large deals before breakfast. Philip's voice sharpened. "You bring lawyers into my house?" "You invited me to discuss business," I replied evenly. "I don't attend business meetings without representation." Vanessa whispered something under her breath. Mason looked like he wanted to disappear. Daniel opened the briefcase and removed a thick document packet. Blue-backed. Official. Stamped. He handed it to me. I didn't sit. I didn't rush. I walked slowly toward the center of the table and placed the documents beside the foreclosure notice I had already exposed. "You mentioned expansion," I said quietly. Philip didn't respond. "You mentioned needing adjacent land to secure the water rights required for the spa construction." His eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" "Because," I said, sliding the top page forward, "I acquired it this afternoon." Silence. Kind that compresses air in a room. Cynthia blinked. "Acquired what?" "The Harbor Ridge Marina property," I said calmly. Philip went pale. "That's impossible," he breathed. "The owner refused to sell." "He refused to sell to you," I corrected. Daniel added smoothly. "The transaction finalized at 2:14 p.m. Funds transferred in full." Vanessa shook her head. "Why would you do that?" I met her gaze. "Because it's prime waterfront land." But that wasn't the real reason. Philip stepped closer to the table, scanning the documents. "You can't develop that without our access road," he snapped. Daniel smiled faintly. The access road easement was included in the acquisition terms. Philip's hand trembled slightly as he flipped through pages. "You manipulated him," he hissed at me. "No," I replied. "I negotiated." There's a difference. Without the marina property, his expansion project was dead. Without expansion, projected revenue collapsed. Without revenue, the loan covenants would fail, which meant foreclosure would accelerate. He knew it. I could see it calculating behind his eyes. "You bought it to hurt us," Cynthia whispered. I looked at her steadily. "I bought it because it's valuable." Philip slammed the papers onto the table. "You're sabotaging your own family." "No," I said calmly. "I'm securing my own future." Daniel stepped back, allowing the silence to deepen. The shift was complete now. They weren't evaluating me anymore. They were assessing risk. And I was the risk. "What do you want?" Philip demanded. Finally. Not in order. Question. I didn't answer immediately. I walked toward the window, looking out over the darkened vineyard that once symbolized untouchable status. Then I turned back. "I want nothing from you." Confusion flickered across Cynthia's face. "That marina property," I continued, "will become my 6th hotel." Vanessa's mouth fell open. "You wouldn't dare build next to us." "I wouldn't build next to you," I said quietly. "I'll build over you." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Philip's authority, the thing he had carried like a crown my entire life, cracked visibly. "If you proceed with development," he said tightly, "the bank will see our instability." "They already do," I replied. "You can't win this way," he tried again. "I already did." Daniel closed the briefcase. "Miss Brianna's acquisition gives her exclusive control over the only viable water expansion route. Any continuation of your spa project would require partnership terms." Partnership. Now the word belonged to me. Philip stared at me. "You're extorting us." "No," I said calmly. "You attempted to leverage me." "I leveraged first. That's how business works." Cynthia began to cry softly. "You're destroying everything your grandfather built." I felt something tighten briefly in my chest. Not guilt. Memory. I had loved my grandfather. He believed in craftsmanship, in sustainability, in steady growth. He would have hated what this estate had become, inflated and hollow. "I'm not destroying it," I said softly. "It was already collapsing." Philip's voice dropped. "If you walk out that door tonight without helping us..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The threat was empty. 'Cause leverage had shifted. "I'm not walking out without helping," I said. Hope flickered across Cynthia's face. "I'm helping by ending the illusion." I picked up the acquisition contract and signed the final confirmation page Daniel had prepared. The scratch of pen against paper sounded louder than Philip's shouting ever had. Daniel took the documents back. "I'll file at 8 a.m. "Thank you," I replied. He nodded and left the room. Now it was just us again. But it was no longer their house controlling the narrative. It was my decision controlling their future. Philip looked at me differently now. Not as a daughter. Not as a disappointment. As a competitor. "You've changed," he said quietly. I met his eyes. "No. I just stopped waiting." I picked up my bag. "I suggest you review your loan terms carefully," I added calmly. "And consider restructuring before the bank makes that decision for you." Vanessa whispered, "This is insane." No. This was strategy. I walked toward the door. Behind me I heard Philip's voice, not commanding, not furious. Uncertain. "Brianna." I paused but didn't turn fully. "If we wanted to negotiate..." There it was. Recognition. "You know where to find my office," I said. Not the house. Not the estate. My office. And then I walked out into the cool night air. The balance had shifted permanently. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't asking to be included. I was deciding whether they qualified. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped into my car. The estate behind me glowed faintly in the distance, columns, fountains, and hedges still attempting to suggest grandeur, but now I saw it clearly. Not a monument to legacy, but to complacency. I slid into the driver's seat and leaned back. For a moment I allowed myself a deep breath. This was victory. Not the flashy kind. Not the kind printed in magazines. But the kind that resonates in quiet confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you built something real, something that cannot be borrowed, inherited, or stolen. 8 months of silence from the people who were supposed to be my family had taught me more than any business class ever could. They didn't believe in me. They didn't celebrate me. They didn't even notice me. Until my $94 million hotel empire proved them wrong. And now I held the leverage. The ultimate one. I turned the key in the ignition. The electric hum of the car filled the cabin. I thought about my journey, every sleepless night, every meal skipped, every investor who laughed, every setback that could have broken me. None of it had been wasted. I was reminded that power isn't about shouting commands across a mahogany table. It isn't about empty titles or inherited authority. It's about control, leverage, precision, and knowing when to act. Tonight I acted. I hadn't just defended my fortune. I had redefined the rules. I had shown them, quietly but unmistakably, that wealth without skill, without discipline, without vision is meaningless. I looked in the rearview mirror. The estate looked small now. Insignificant. Small because it had relied on the illusion of power. Small because it had ignored the daughter who could actually build something enduring. I smiled. This was the harvest of years of meticulous planning. Culmination of proving to myself and quietly to the world that I was capable. And somewhere deep inside I realized something else. I wasn't walking away angry. I wasn't walking away seeking revenge. I was walking away free. I had rewritten my story. I drove toward the city lights, toward my office, toward the future I had built with my own hands. The reflection in the rearview mirror was of someone who would never again wait for approval. Someone who understood that family, for better or worse, could be a transaction, but my worth would never be negotiable. 'Cause for 8 months, silence had been their tool. But now my success was mine. My leverage was mine. My empire was mine. And for the first time, I realized that validation doesn't come from the people who doubted you. It comes from knowing exactly what you're capable of. The city skyline unfolded ahead of me like a promise. Every light a reminder that I had built this world, not inherited it, not begged for it, not borrowed it. I glanced at the folded acquisition contracts on the passenger seat. They represented not just control over assets but over the narrative of my life. I had arrived. Not for recognition. Not for applause. Not even for family approval. But for myself. And that, I realized, is the kind of victory that no one can ever take away. I pressed my foot on the accelerator. Car surged forward effortlessly. And in the rearview mirror, the estate faded into darkness. Not my home. Not my legacy. Just a lesson. A lesson that dreams, no matter how belittled or ignored, have power. That discipline trumps neglect. That vision outlasts doubt. I whispered quietly, almost to myself. They didn't believe in my dreams until my $94 million hotel empire proved them wrong. And with that, I drove on. Toward my future. Toward the next challenge. Toward the life I had built, completely, irreversibly, and unapologetically, on my own terms.